had to cancel out last week. We had a major funeral of a key community player, a great person that I had to be at. So
yeah, well,
glad to be with you today.
Yeah, that's understandable, Tim. We always appreciate getting you in here anytime. So glad to have you on us, especially this week. Now, are you outraged, Congressman Tim? Are you outraged as I am?
Don't say about what.
Well, I just came from the Saline Celtic Festival, and I saw clear evidence of the NSA there, which stood for the National Sword Fighters Association. So, if you're talking about outrage, I don't have a sword or a dagger in my hand right now. If you're talking about what we saw with Strzok this past week and the arrogant prevarication that went on, and expecting us to believe that he had no bias that affected anything he did with the FBI. You know, I for a fact know that there are a lot of FBI agents that watched that and said, man alive, this guy has hurt us, and hopefully he will pay in the end.
So, Congressman, is there a way to put out a public call from the Hill and say, all FBI agents, if you have something to say, if you got something to get out, let's get it out and let's end these people. I want to see those top dozen people at the FBI go to jail. I want them wearing orange. I want them in prison. I'm tired of this. Any of us would be in jail for what they've done, and yet we keep seeing nothing happening. And I know you're no fan of Jeff Sessions either, nor am I at this point, but I want somebody to go to jail. Somebody must go to jail for this.
Somebody's got to let Jeff Sessions out of jail. Free Jeff Sessions. Free Jeff Sessions.
Yeah, we haven't seen Jeff Sessions for a while. I don't know if it'd be any better if we did see him, but no, he ought to be talking very, very tough with FBI Director Wray and saying, if you're not going to do your job in making sure that the FBI is put in its vaulted position again of an agency of law enforcement that stands for justice and from the top down, and support your agents that are out there doing tough work in tough places, putting their lives on the line in many cases. And you've got yahoos like this at the top level, starting with Comey and moving on down through the ones we've seen so far. Something has to change. But again, that's where, and I'm not certain why President Trump has remained a bit silent on this. He is a one that could automatically declassify information. He could call for all of those tapes and emails to be released. He could call for significant action, and in the end, he could support contempt of Congress, whatever else. As I listened to the closing comments of my colleague Bob Goodlatte, the chairman of Judiciary, I appreciated the comments where he basically said it isn't over yet. And what we heard from you, Mr. Strzok, today was incomplete, did not answer, was not truthful, and this is not the end. So we'll see what happens from here.
Yeah, who are these FBI attorneys who are telling Strzok, Page, and whoever else? Yeah, we didn't see that. We didn't see the Lisa Page testimony the other day because that's behind closed doors, right? But was there FBI lawyers doing the same thing as they did with him, telling her not to answer?
My fear is that they were, though she's no longer with the FBI, but Strzok isn't either. Okay,
so and, I'm just here's what I always.
Excuse me, did you say Strzok is not a member of the FBI anymore?
He's not. He's not. He was demoted or lateral, whatever they called it, moved to HR, and then ultimately he was walked out of the building after a number of things came out. So whether it's suspended or whether he's fired and removed from it, it shouldn't make a difference because these guys ought to be working for Congress. FBI is supposed to give us the information. They're supposed to release the necessary information that we have power to ask for under our subpoena power. And to give a guy any type of advice that says, we don't want you giving away top secret, then we need to know that. These attorneys need to be coming to our committee staff, at the very least, our investigators, and say, this is why we're going to tell Strzok not to answer that question, because it would give away information that we can't allow to be given out. That's one thing. But when they're not saying that, and we have duly elected members of Congress who serve on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee and on the Judiciary Committee, have all rights and responsibilities for funding the Department of Justice, but also for receiving any information, as long as we have the top secret classification, which most of us do, it ought to be given to us, or we ought to have information say, this is why we'd appreciate it if you didn't push here, but this is the factual information, and we can tell you behind closed doors. So Lisa Page, if she had an opportunity the other day behind closed doors, there is no reason she should have been given orders from any FBI attorney to not give the full truth, especially when it was a closed session.
What are the consequences of a congressional subpoena? Just if I got subpoenaed and I said, nah, never mind, what are the consequences?
Well, I think you'd probably have more problem, and that's what frustrates us about some of these others. When Lisa Page, for instance, ignored the subpoena, said, I'm not coming. I need more time. Well, there's a process by which you ask for more time. You just don't not show up.
Well, it seems like there are no consequences. No. Just watching the news, it seems like there's no consequences.
Yeah, we've seen the threats.
Yeah, the only consequence is contempt of Congress. Since she's not a FBI agent anymore, we can't impeach her, but we can hold her in contempt of Congress. And then you would hope, unlike when we held Attorney General Holder in contempt of Congress, he had control of the D.C. district attorney, and so he just basically told his district attorney not to file charges and prosecute him. That shouldn't be the case here.
So there are no consequences.
We have a president. We have an attorney general that ought to say to the district attorney of D.C., you will do your job because you're under our authority, and you will prosecute Peter Strzok for not answering the questions, not giving the truth. And we think there may be some perjury there by some of the statements that he made in that meeting and the prior meeting, which was behind closed doors. So it still could come. But that's where, again, the president has all power. And while I support this president, I loved last week him over in Brussels. It was exciting to see. But doggone it, I think he's going to have to engage with this deal with Strzok, no matter what it might look like relative to the investigations going on by Mueller, when you have an FBI agent tearing down, tarnishing the good faith efforts of the FBI and allowing people to think that their government, their law enforcement agents are not going to work for them, then you've got a big problem.
Yeah, it's like they're above the law, and that's what drives me absolutely insane. These people are not above the law. If this is not the United States of America, if we don't see those. So my question is this, Tim. We always hear, we can't jeopardize security or whatever. That's why we're not answering. This is a domestic spying case, so we don't have agents who are at risk of being killed by a foreign power or something else. So I don't want to hear that excuse from the FBI saying we don't want to jeopardize an agent, unless it's a Clinton thing. Maybe the Clinton body count might come into play, but we're not talking about agents in a foreign country who could be exposed and then killed. So I don't want to hear that excuse from the FBI. And then when they're talking about how they don't want to give away how they're finding, we all know. You can Google up anything about what we do to find out information from the internet and phone calls and everything else. There's no secret there. So I'm tired of the FBI using this excuse not to let the information out. It doesn't make any sense to me. The president should go ahead and expose all of it. Let us all see it.
I agree.
Okay.
Good. I agree.
It just kills me when Jordan keeps saying, so who is this Corn? Who is this Corn? And, I can't tell you who Corn is. You know, it's like,
it is absolutely. Well, Tim, I hope you keep pushing for that. I know you don't sit on some of those committees that would have more access, but I do appreciate that you're up there and being a voice for us, because I think you're right. The president needs to step up and just declassify the stuff. Put it all out there. Let's all see it and make that judgment call ourselves.
I really think we have to do that. Even take a chance on some information that might be best if it weren't let out, in order to restore some belief that there is a rule of law, and we're all coming under that, and we're all responsible to it. So I'm hoping, in the end, that takes place. I sat on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee for 6 years before I was elevated to the Energy and Commerce Committee. But I tell you, sitting and watching portions of that hearing yesterday or 2 days ago, I was coming out of my chair numerous times. It's just so frustrating. And you didn't have to be nasty and holler and shout, but doggone it, don't give me this stuff that you were not biased when we read all of that biased information.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Way, especially at your leadership position.
Yeah. Well, my question is, what enforcement arm is there for Congress should somebody... You mentioned the DA of D.C. I thought the Capitol Police enforced congressional subpoenas.
No, they serve them. You either have a...
they serve them, but they don't enforce.
Yeah, you can't enforce. We have no prosecutorial or enforcement powers in the legislative branch. That has to come from the judicial branch, which is executive part of government.
Okay, so we have to go back to relying on Jeff Sessions if we want anything enforced for you guys.
You got to go back to relying on the president.
Okay.
Really, when you get right down to it, it goes back to the president because he appoints Jeff Sessions, and he can tell Jeff Sessions what to do, and Jeff Sessions can resign if he says, no, I'm not going to do that. There's a check and balance there. But the president has ultimate authority, and that's an answer I can't give you now why we haven't gone that far. So I guess we'll see when he gets back from being over in Europe and Russia. But it is time.
Okay, so...
okay. I just didn't know if we wanted to bring it up.
No, you certainly can. So we talked a little bit last week, Tim. All of a sudden we saw, because Jim Jordan has been a player and a pusher of this, trying to expose this nonsense, and yet last week we saw the Democrats and the media try to put a scandal together to go after Jim Jordan. Is it because he's getting that close? Is that why that happened?
Does it have legs?
I don't know. I talked with Jim, and I came in the Congress with Jim. I wrestled, not at the level he wrestled.
I wondered about that.
Yeah, he was an NCAA champion, I think, 3 times, and I was on the mat.
Oh, you really did wrestle? I thought you meant you wrestled with a question or something. You meant wrestle. Okay,
yeah, I was a wrestler.
I was a wrestler in high school and college as well, but Jim was a wrestler. I mean, he was NCAA champion. So, and when you see 6 of the coaches that coached with him, including the head coach coming out now and defending him and saying this is a crock, and these 2 guys that are making those charges have legal background problems themselves, it begins to smell a bit. And when Jim has been voiced as a possible replacement for or new speaker when we vote for the next speaker, I think you're going to see the resist movement start to try to tear down, just like they tried to tear down and did a pretty good job with Kevin McCarthy when he was going to fill in and become speaker after Boehner, and ultimately had to back away.
So does Jordan have a shot at that?
I don't think so, but you never know. Jordan will be a player in it. I don't think he'd have the votes, but
because he's too conservative.
Probably too libertarian.
Okay.
But probably the biggest thing is that he doesn't have a coalition that's big enough to do that type of thing. There's all sorts of stuff, behind the scenes that go on that make a speaker what a speaker is. Speaker is the worst job I think you could possibly have, and yet it is also the most important job. And I think we've seen a speaker here that we've had get us through tax reform, a bunch of federal deregulation that went on that's having huge impact, et cetera, but it's still a tough thing to get 218 votes when you have an independent group called the Republican Conference. But Jim is at a point where he certainly is a lightning rod for the resist movement, for what I guess we should call not progressive movement, the Democrat Socialists, because that's really what's taking over the party now. And it's not just simply that they've been there. Now they're coming out of the closet, and they're calling themselves that. And Bernie Sanders, of course, who is a socialist and been a proud socialist and has caucused with the Democrats for years, now he's getting people who are actually running as Democrat socialists and winning. Okay, I think that says to your listeners, we can't let up. We have to take this